Welcome to Can, the marketing podcast. I'm Ben from Human Digital, the B2B marketing agency.
And I'm Steph from Q Marketing, making brands shine since ages ago.
This week, we're talking about packaging design and why the thing sitting on a supermarket shelf is doing more marketing work than most campaigns ever will.
So next time you're buying your jar of peanut butter, take a really good look and ask yourself if it's actually doing its job.
Remember, we release a new episode every week, so make sure you hit that subscribe button. Hey, Steph, how's it going?
Good, thanks, Ben. How are you?
Good. It's been a week. I was in Melbourne last week and over the weekend and had a few meetings, but as always, had a bit of pleasure at the same time and checked out the Comedy Fest, saw Kiwi, Chris Parker.
Oh my God, I love Chris. He's so great.
He was up to his usual antics in a basement in the depths of Melbourne. Brilliant show. Louis Hansen, who's a Melbourne-based comedian, big on TikTok and Instagram, did a show as well, talking about his journey. Amazing. And my all-time favorite, the queen of comedy, Ursula Carlson, who is South African Kiwi, just amazing.
7 days regular. She's quite well known here too, isn't she?
She is so good. Big fan. And then I also caught a little bit of Electric Island, which is a festival, which is it's kind of like EDM festival.
Yeah,
and
nice.
Saw the DJ Eats Everything, and he was playing a lot of great hits. And then this week was On Social by the Marketing Association.
Yes.
That was actually just yesterday, and that was really good. It was at the Millennium. A lot of good topics, but we had a few that were really good. So one is how we did Canned, the marketing podcast live. We did Small Budgets, Big Impact. They had the same topic. So we had Emily Rulliford, who's the owner and manager at Kiwi Water Park, Tony Collins, who's a managing director at Beyond, Regan Grafton at
Think about. Yes.
Yep. And Zanya, who led the panel. And yeah, they obviously had a much more social take, and that some of the key messages to get more out of your budget.
Yep.
So they were saying invest time in creative ideation before spending any money. 100%. Totally agree.
Yep.
The idea is the multiplier. Treat your own time as a production budget. I think that works in some cases. I mean, I think not show me someone that has a lot of time and not much budget. Yeah, I think that's a tough one. Entertain first, sell second. I think that's really key with social.
Very key.
Use controversy and tension deliberately. Don't always block the haters. Kind of lean in sometimes. Engagement is engagement.
Well, and it's your organic, isn't it? If you don't have much budget.
100%. And I mean, On Social is mostly organic. I mean, they talk about campaigns, but a lot of what they're talking about is actually, pure earned media. And bold execution on a modest budget beats safe execution on a big one every time. So really well done to that panel.
Nice.
Brilliant. What have you been up to?
Okay, so less exciting stuff on the interweb stuff, but as we know, I was up in Paihia for 5 days last week, and so that was great, working remotely from a hotel room, but had a wonderful time actually up at the Waitangi grounds on Saturday. So
love it there.
It was really great.
Beautiful.
And I didn't have any children with me, so I spent a lot of time in the museum reading all of the details. That was just a fantastic experience, and actually quite nice to take an actual break on a weekend to not work. And then actually I'm working on a pretty exciting project at the moment, and went and visited. I'm going to be doing the rounds of visiting some ethnic grocers.
Oh, I love the groceries. That's so good.
It was incredible. I walked into this. It was a store called Yogiji's in Henderson. Man, if you ever want to make an authentic Indian curry, and it was great because I was with my client, and she was showing me all of the snacks, and there's just this wealth of food that you and I would never normally experience. And
it's amazing. We are so lucky in Auckland and in Australia to have amazing supermarkets in every variety, and you can yeah, if you think you've seen packaging, which is this week's episode, go to one of those stores. It's amazing what you can find and the variety and the taste profiles. Definitely take a friend that knows what they're doing.
Because you know what's really interesting about going into those shops is when you don't understand when you don't understand what you're looking at to a large extent, you're really noticing what the cues are that you're picking up to go, oh, does this look like a popular brand? Does this look like a premium brand? What is this product in the packaging?
And it's a whole different culture as well, where and different cultures have different cues and different things.
Yeah. So no, I loved it. It was fantastic.
That's brilliant.
Now I am news free today.
News free.
I'm news free. I'm handing over the news reins virtually to you, Ben. Hit us
Yes,
with
well,
what's happening.
I have a little bit of news. So the main thing is that Tim Cook of Apple has resigned. So he's finishing up, I think, on the 1st of September. And John Turnus is the next CEO. So, I mean, Tim Cook has had an amazing journey, obviously filling in some big shoes from the founder, and has taken the company to record revenue and profitability. So yeah, well done, Cook. Not without controversy. I think, there's a lot of people that criticize these big tech companies. Not an easy job.
It's news, isn't it? Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
And so what's the topic this week, Steph?
Okay, so we have spent some time talking about packaging, but now we're going to talk about packaging and kind of its role in doing the really important job that your packaging design has, particularly in a supermarket. So we are lucky enough today to be joined by Matt Grantham, who is one of the creative designers at OnFire Design. I've worked with him really closely, and he knows a lot about kind of what a good design looks like, particularly in how to get your brand seen and picked up off a shelf. So without further ado, let's welcome Matt to the pod.
Brilliant.
I'd like to introduce Matt to the pod, Matt Grantham from OnFire Design. So Matt has a wealth of expertise in design, and I had the pleasure of working with him about 18 months to 2 years ago. And today, one of the things that we talk about, we've done a packaging episode, but actually I've on trips that I've been on recently, I'm just seeing there's so much to unpack in a supermarket. And I thought, who better to get on than someone who's living and breathing across all sorts of categories and kind of in that design space. And I think you're going to bring a super interesting dynamic and thought process maybe to what Ben and I are used to, Matt. So do you want to just tell us a little bit about, obviously you're not from New Zealand, so tell us about who you are and what brought you here.
Yeah, so obviously, I'm Matt. I am the current creative director at OnFire Design. So we are a Takabuna-based design studio, and we are. I mean, obviously, we do a lot of packaging work. And that goes across a lot of big national brands, international and Australian. And thanks to COVID, it's allowed us to stretch our wings, doing a lot of international work as well, into places like the Middle East and America. That's only one part of the studio. So another part of the studio, which really started on fire many years ago now, that's more to do with specializing in helping storytell for New Zealand manufacturers. And that can be, when we say New Zealand manufacturers, that's not necessarily food. That's basically people who make stuff here. So a majority of it is outdoor lifestyle brands. So pretty much there's pretty much not a boat brand, a bike brand, an RV brand, but we haven't touched or at least had some influence over the years.
This is a slight segue. Am I still there? Yep.
So when I was doing the research on you, Matt, I found some interesting things out about you, actually. Apparently you're a trampoline champion.
Many moons ago. So when I was, as I said, I've got ADHD. When I got, my mum got a very early diagnosis. Thank you very much for my mum. And she ended up taking me down to the local leisure centre pretty much every single night. I didn't really, I was so young, I didn't realise why she was doing it. So now I obviously
bounce it out, Matt. Just bounce it out.
So when I was young, I was just doing every single evening. I was doing all sorts of sports. It didn't really matter what sort of sports. I just tended to gravitate towards a couple. So trampolining was the first one.
Nice.
Really good at that. And then I got up to a decent, I would say, county level. But I hit a ceiling there, and then I broke my wrist. And I
that'll do it.
I kind of lost my mojo with that, and then I picked up squash after that. So that became a thing, and then university hit, and then university life, so
hard to pick up the ladies if you're trampolining.
Well,
I mean, I just feel
like you've got that culture, you've got all of that, and squash isn't exactly the sexiest of sports by any means, especially back in sort of like in the 90s when I was at uni. So I guess that's a good segue to go back to so obviously you can tell by a little bit of a fucked up accent. I've got a little bit of Kiwi English twang going on. So born and raised in UK, educated in UK. And once I left university, I went straight to London, but pretty much as every single design graduate did back in the sort of like mid-90s. And I jobbed around in London for about 3 or 4 years. Landed at a couple of really nice studios, a couple of big ones back in the day. I'd done a dash at Pearlfisher. Back in the sort of like 96, 97, a really nice studio called Wagstaff's. Now, Wagstaff's is really interesting because they were doing very early supermarket own brand work for Waitrose.
Funny you say that. We were just saying we want to talk. We want to dive into the home brand stuff.
Yeah, so that's really interesting. That was very early days, because Sainsbury's at that time was really leading the charge. From a UK perspective. And they led the charge from a global, so everybody looked at Sainsbury's. Waitrose really caught on pretty quickly. So Wagstaff's was a good studio to be at when they were doing that. And then one other studio, got itchy feet, travelled, landed here. Thought it was only going to be for like 6 months or so, but a couple of jobs, sort of like ran into each other, and pretty soon, very quickly, a few years went by. And I bounced between here and I went to Melbourne very quickly and came back again. But
you didn't like Melbourne?
I love Melbourne. But the opportunity, there was other job opportunities here, which were more appealing. So I came back here, and got my residency, got my passport, and now I'm
we've adopted you.
Full Kiwi. Brilliant.
If England are playing All Blacks, I still bleed England red.
Brilliant. And you worked for the BBC for a bit?
Yeah, that was an interesting one. I was in between. That was very early junior stages. Now, in junior stages, back when I was jobbing around, I don't know if it was legal back then, but literally they didn't pay you anything.
Are you making cups of tea at this point? Like, I'm just thinking of this term.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But they were literally paying you. If you were lucky, they were paying you travel, and that was maybe a little bit of living sort of thing. So I was bouncing around doing a couple of jobs there, and then there was a bit of a gap in between. And a friend for university who landed in more sort of like storytelling side, he actually got a job in the script editing side. So he actually said, there's an opportunity here. Just come in here for a little while and just see if you like it. Because I've always liked writing and storytelling and that sort of thing. Yeah. It was okay, but I sucked at it. And I didn't really like sort of editing scripts other people have wrote. And I think I was a bit too big-headed back then, and I was trying to sort of like leverage in sort of like ideas and kept getting my wrist slapped. So I didn't last very long. So that was 6 or 7 months, and then luckily back into the junior designer role. Interesting though, interesting. Right. It's always good just to go, that sort of journey rather than a linear sort of thing. So,
100%. It makes you more well-rounded.
Yeah,
so, I mean, I think obviously, where's a good place to start here in terms of the kind of problems that people come to you with? Like, let's start there. Let's start in that area there. Yeah. So, obviously, probably people like myself and Ben come to you as a marketer and go, look, we need some help, either creating a new brand, doing a rebrand. What are the sorts of problems that you guys kind of see every day to day that packaging or design is going to help solve for them?
So obviously, I think a lot of our portfolio, especially over the last sort of 5 years or so, it's dominated by brands that for some reason need a refresh. Now, there's umpteen reasons for needing a refresh. The big one that we found, which gets a lot of pressure, is retail comes to a brand owner, whether that's a big corporate brand or an owner operator brand, and going, worst case scenario is going, we're going to chop your brand unless
do something about it.
Or there's other reasons for being. There's question marks over. These aren't selling, so I'm going to get rid of all of these. So you're going to be left with just one face unless you do this.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of there's a lot of that sort of problem solving when
So
clients
it
come.
sounds like it's a commercial problem that people come to you essentially because their
The
products aren't
majority
selling.
of the majority of time when we do a lot of FMCG brands,
Yeah.
we have this nice sort of balance between, obviously we've got a lot of FMCG brands that have that problem, and that's generally when we come in. But then we've also got a lot of owner operator brands, and some of the time they come to us with a product and a name. There have been occasions where they've got a product but no name and no real idea. Going, I've got this, I don't
I've
know
got an
what to do with
idea.
it. I don't know
I've got
what
an
to do.
idea.
So
let's say a product isn't performing, and sales are down. How do you know it's a packaging problem? I mean, could it be, it's the actual product itself doesn't work, maybe it's a competitive problem. Like, is every problem a packaging problem to you, or is it a packaging problem by the time it gets to you?
Tends to be by the time it gets to us. I think it's been ironed out, and actually it is a packaging problem. And it is, I always ask the question about the product, because I always say to a client, at the end of the day, you could have the sexiest sort of packaging and the most cut packaging ever. If the product tastes awful or doesn't deliver, you're going to get a sales spike, and then you're going to get a serious drop off.
I think you and I have been drinking the same Kool-Aid there. I've said that many times. It's the same thing.
Yeah. Product is always king. No matter, it's no matter what category you're in, no matter where you are in a supermarket, whether you're a small operator or a big operator, product is always king. So whatever we wrap it up in, that's really trying to sell the proposition, try to sell the story or the mission. So a really good example is there's some rebrands which we've done recently where retailers gone to the brand owner and for example has said, had conversations your brand is being perceived as lower than our own brand, and that's one of the worst
Lower than home
Ooh.
brand. Wow.
So it's a brand, and it's been in market for a long time, but it's been perceived, it's been seen lower or as same standard as our own brand. So then they start to question, why don't we just knock you out and we'll just take your place?
Brutal, man. So brutal.
So then so from a retailer's point of view, or from a brand, but from a brand owner's point of view, they got to go back to them and go, okay,
so really we're with it.
Our story. We figured out who our consumer is, because that's then for me that triggers and sort of signals in terms of the brand's a little bit lost.
Yeah. And a lot of it, I think, is because FMCG, there's always a pressure of this race to the bottom, and I feel like some brands, because they are always discounting, always on sale, they're not investing in their marketing, they're not investing in their packaging. They might have started out as the category leader, and all of a sudden they're at the bottom of the shelf because they're taking a lot of short-term strategic changes.
Yeah, and I think they probably look at things outside of a packaging, which to try and save them. And so all the time, it's basically that I think they've got to go back to the packaging and look and really objectively look at it and go and look, and to your point, if they've been in the market for a number of years, they've got to sort of freshly look at what is my category doing? Who else is in here? Who's taken all my lunch money?
It's super interesting, right? Because I spend a lot of time walking the shelves of supermarkets, and there's a couple of things I want to ask you about. One is this: in some categories, there's category codes, and everyone is the same color.
It's a wall of sameness.
I guess. Can you talk us through maybe the advantages or disadvantages of the same color as everyone else in that categories, because you're conforming to go, coffee should all look like this, or whatever the category might be, versus being peanut butter is probably a really good example. Sticky Beak have done a couple of posts over time where there was a peanut butter brand that just had a bright pink label. Pink is not a color that anyone uses to determine smooth peanut butter, crunchy peanut butter, or whatever.
Yes.
In those instances, have you got any kind of sage advice or ways that you tend to look at it?
Yeah, absolutely. I always look at category rules in terms of there are certain rules that you need to stick to. Some rules that you can bend a little bit, and some rules that you can completely break. Now, the brands that do it really well, and they are less so than the mass, they break category rules. I'm
Which is
thinking,
that's a hard one to convince a CEO or owner to, I
absolutely.
imagine, right?
That
Hey
tends,
guys,
yeah,
do something completely
yeah.
different.
Mm.
Yeah.
And to your point, those ones tend to be founder led, or they come, they
Mm.
literally just come out. They seem to come out of nowhere, and they do a thing, and they own a thing, and away they go. Great examples are Lewis Road, how they came in and just really
Yes.
Amazing. Dominated. Yeah.
pouring oat milk. They came out
Love.
of literally pack shape.
They called it boring. I mean, that's a start
quite
for,
exactly.
you
Yeah.
know.
I still don't understand how you get milk out of oats. It still
Yeah.
perplexes me to this day.
Brands
I
like
mean,
that.
do you milk like I
Yeah,
don't,
yeah. Yeah, you should do a video. That's a marketing campaign, Robert. Brands like that have obviously just been brave enough, to make a decision and stick to it, and
sticking to
ride
it.
it.
And that's so true. And we talk about that in many other facets of marketing, and go, sometimes the best thing to do is you hold your conviction, and you stay the course until you get
Stay
the
the
result that you
course.
want,
Yeah.
which is
Yep.
hard
Yep.
in a supermarket environment, really tough.
So,
Yeah.
so controversial question. What is the ROI of packaging? And so my assumption here is that if you invest in packaging, because packaging is obviously the design, but then also the materials that you're putting. We've done an episode on luxury, and we talk about how, heavy paper and luxurious textures, Hermes and Tiffany, they all put a lot of emphasis on their packaging. But yeah, do you have any guidelines for what the ROI of good packaging is?
I mean, obviously, we're just talking about sort of like sticking to your conviction. So, if you once you've launched something or refreshed something, there's a knee-jerk reaction when sales aren't immediate. So from that point of view, you do have to sort of like take a deep breath and
It'll be okay.
appreciate that whoever your design partner is taken you through the process, and you've ticked off all the proper boxes, and you understand what you're actually doing from that point of view. So there's an idea of just taking a deep breath. After that, as long as if you've got everything right and all your ducks are lined up and everything's correct, the ROI for me is consumer love and consumer loyalty, because there will be something in that packaging design, be it a visual asset, be it color, be it piece of photography, that people will just recognize instantly, and they won't even think about looking at a competitor brand. They'll see that brand, they'll see your brand, and actually
that's
just not even think about it.
You make one of the most important points about designing for a supermarket, and that is that, so unlike a Tiffany or a Hermes, where you are having a very long considered experience with a brand, when you are doing your supermarket shop, I think the stat is you've got 3 to 5 seconds to get someone's attention, right?
That's
I believe that it's super important if you're doing a rebrand, you still need to look like, in some degree, you need to look like the brand that you were. There's going to be something in that goes, oh, that's the peanut butter I bought last week.
Because otherwise you're lost on the shelf. And to your point, Matt, someone is not going to, you could be right. It's like, I call it a boy's look in the fridge. It's like right in front of you, but you can't see it. It's like, where's the butter? It's like right in front of you.
Yes. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, from an ROI point of view, and I know it's difficult because it doesn't immediately go to dollar value, but
sometimes it actually does
love,
too, though.
Yeah, consumer love and consumer loyalty does eventually get you there, and it's a gradual incline, but it's a sustainable incline as well. It's not just one of these bump moments where there's plenty of brands out there that have done that. They've really entered with a hiss and a roar. And then I hate to say it, 6 months, a year later, gone.
Here's a question for you. Have you ever had instances where, because I know kind of as a client, we'll go and test design, and sometimes customers will go, hate that design. Have you ever seen instances where maybe someone's had some feedback, or you thought that people are going to hate it, and in actual fact it's grown on people?
In terms of the actual owner or the person's briefing in?
It's
or the buyer.
The buyer.
Yeah. Who cares about the owner? We're only interested in the customer.
And the customer. In terms of something that's growing on something, I mean, I don't. going back to
I
that
mean, I
little,
call it like the Labubu effect. Like it's effing ugly, but people are obsessed with it.
If you ask somebody if they'd like a Labubu, that's a good example. If you've asked someone if they would like a Labubu in question, like in a survey, they'd probably say absolutely not. And yet, so it's that whole
something
maybe
you did
customer
happened.
sentiment has been actually no, we don't like that color. With those colors clash, we'd never buy it. But in actual fact, once it's gone into market, it's actually done quite well.
Distinctive.
Yeah, yeah. I think people can get used to something.
I'm sure there's something that nothing's really coming to the top of my head. I'm sure things like that has happened in places in America and the UK.
Yeah.
Yes.
If
What about
if you've got people coming to, so if you think about a market, so kind of, the people who listen to us are generally, marketers who are facing real world problems.
yes?
If I'm sitting in the marketing seat and I'm like, look, Woolworths has told me that they're going to derange my product and I need to do something about my packaging.
Yoink.
What are the things that are like, what is going to come into, how do you do a good job? What does a marketer need to give to you to help you do a good job?
Well, obviously, from our point of view, we need to understand the product, understand the brand, understand what that company is doing at the moment. Has the company changed? Has the company mission sort of has shifted? Because a lot of the time, companies like that pivot. In terms of raw hard data, it's always informative to see actual sales figures and seeing shopping carts comparisons. In the category, what's been happening over last year, exactly what's been happening with your sales and your sales per unit per supermarket. And then you can dive a little bit deeper and just go, okay, so what is this shopper also buying from that point of view?
And a bit of context.
Yeah, and a bit of context. To come back to that other brand which we done, which got the sort of the hard sort of like your brand has basically got the perception of an own brand. That was essentially the brief. So the brief came out of that hard conversation.
Make it better than a home brand. Yeah.
So I think it helped clarify for the client that they've let that brand just run and just with minimal input, minimal dollars, and it just ended up just being sort of like a moment. And there was nothing compelling about it. There was no tone of voice. There was no personality. There was no reason to pick up this brand as opposed to any other brand.
The other thing that happens is customers, if you've been around for 20, 30 years, your age of your customer, you've constantly got to bring.
Absolutely. Yep. That's a common thing. It's different consumers age in and out of markets. Different brands come in, so different categories change. Great one, you mentioned before, peanut butter. Peanut butter used to be dominated by just one or two big corporate
Sanitarium.
brands. And then Fix and Fogg and Picks come in and literally change the game. They didn't just change the game. They just made people buy peanut butter at what, $8, $10 a jar? I mean, that is
I bet Ben buys expensive peanut butter.
It depends. No, I don't buy the Fix and Fogg. I'm one level down from Fix and Fogg.
What's one level down?
Is that
Brothers or something?
Oh, Nut Brothers.
Nut Brothers. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's not Fix and Fogg. Fix and I don't know. Sometimes I eat a lot of peanut butter, so I need a bulk jar.
Peanut butter. I absolutely
too much information.
Fix and Fogg. I'm just Fix and Fogg all day. Because the flavors. What's the reason why you started buying Nut Brothers as opposed to Sanitarium?
So my conditions for peanut butter. So number one, I want it to be in a glass. So I'm a glass jar buyer. I'm not a big fan of plastic. I want it to have low sugar and salt. So that's another condition. I'm often turning it around, making sure that there's no nasties. I don't read everything. And then it needs to be convenient and in a large size. So I typically buy a fairly large bottle. Price does impact me, so I'll buy the Fix and Fogg if it's on special.
Isn't it interesting how you introduce brands like that and you get this effect that that I don't want to say it doesn't impact your weekly budget, but you don't splash in just a few dollars more on things like that. Things like peanut butter. I mean, geez.
Yeah.
I'm like,
But this is
Kamika, we're buying coffees at, what is it now? $6.
$6.70.
Why are you wrestling with $2?
I know.
But this is such a great example because it's first of all, it's understanding the way you shop, Ben, will be different to probably how someone with children shops around a supermarket. So there would be hardly a time where I'm going to stand there and look at the back of something. So it's kind of going, who's the kind of person who would pay more and has the time to and cares about the ingredients at the back. So is that a decision making perspective, and then thinking about what are the categories so if you're an owner operator coming to someone like Matt, what are the categories where people care more and where are the things that they're sort of low investment, and so my packaging or my products just needs to kind of functionally say what it does. And actually that's something we haven't talked about, Matt, communicating on the packaging what the thing is that you're selling.
Yeah. I mean, it comes back to the the likes and dislikes of what I see, from a front face design. I'm very much and thank God it's come back in vogue a little bit. Very much a maximalist sort of designer, and maximalist doesn't mean turn the volume up full blast, but it does mean having like a core distinctive brand asset, which does pretty much all the heavy lifting, an asset where you can look at and go, that's my brand.
Can you give us some examples of ones that work really well in your opinion?
So come back to Fix and Fogg, that pattern, the pattern brand which they have, the pattern which defines the flavors.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how much of a conscious designs decision that was, but that just makes a beautiful navigation.
It's gorgeous.
And it becomes a lifestyle product as well as just peanut butter.
Yeah. You're proud to have it on your bench, right?
Yeah,
like you're a Fix and Fogg family. You've got it next to the logos.
It looks the business as opposed to other brands, which I won't mention. Like, you don't mind having that out on a social occasion. If we go back a few years, I was lucky enough to be at the redesign of Hubbard's back at 2010, 2011, when they came out with the small dumpy packs.
Yes.
Now, one of the conscious design decisions I should say there is to have one of those big, the hero ingredient up as big as possible on that. And that becomes, some designers would call it a brand beacon. Some designers would just call it, brand asset. But having that, as a major visual asset as you're scanning down the aisle. Back in 2010, 2011, that was, now it probably wouldn't sort of like make too many ripples. That made a big tidal wave.
You've just reminded me, talking about having a boy look in a supermarket. My ex-husband always used to buy the wrong spaghetti because the spaghetti and meatballs and the spaghetti and cheese and the spaghetti and something else all looked the same.
Is this canned? Is this in a can?
In a can, yeah. Sorry. What he's?
I'm thinking like the noodles themselves.
No. Yeah. And so we'd honestly it'd get home and there'd just be the wrong thing.
Yeah.
And that's the power of So you talk about Fix and Fogg and navigating flavor and navigating smooth. Like you don't want to come home with a high salt peanut butter, Ben.
Well, I'm not too fussed on salt. It's sugar that's really the kicker.
But that's a classic one. That's what we call a husband. It's still. It's still a thing. It's called the husband test. So it's basically, it's that classic. The wife tells the husband to go in and with a list of things, and to get the nappies, to get the green, to get the branded nappies. They're green and they've got a toddler with a cuddly toy in the front. If that's a great example of a really good pack design with some very distinctive brand assets. If a wife can tell her husband in just like a short sentence, this is the one we buy. Just get that one. If you come back with anything else, you're going to go back to the supermarket and buy the right one.
That's actually
called the husband test.
That's a brilliant example. One of my massive bugbear, well, no, it's not a bugbear, but one of the things I often wonder about, Matt, is the trend. So you've talked about that, the rise and the comeback of the large font. I've just come back from shopping in America. In lots of grocery stores, and particularly in like that prebiotic healthy soda category, the rise of the bubble. You'll have the name for it. I don't like the font and the pastels and the what are we calling that and why?
Why
are we calling that? Well, it's interesting because, as I said, I'm very lucky because it's very much in my very much I have a deep love for
Style.
the big, bold, maximalist, single message sort of style of design. Um, we've gone through that minimalist trend, which was in COVID kind of, and then it kept coming out of COVID, so very stripped back design, beautiful. What we from a designer's perspective, we call it Swiss design.
Okay.
Things laid out on a grid, beautifully done. They look the symmetry is just like a heavenly. So that sort of thing is there. But now, I mean, I haven't been in America because America's great just for looking at a lot of these entrepreneur startup brands.
Yeah.
A lot of them, I love them because they're absolutely effing crazy. Some of them just like off the wall crazy.
Yes.
And they're crazy. And it makes me go, yes, I love it.
But what about where everything?
Because they're very much a one idea brand. I don't want to say I don't want to say a one trick pony, but the brand has a very strong point of view, and that's basically does all the communication. And if it's talking to me, for me that's done 90% of the job. I'm picking that pack up.
There was a brand in the soda space called, it's so weird, I think it was in like a Whole Foods. It's called Tractor. It's a drink called Tractor. I think it's honey based, and they had massive stands and they'd like brand blocking everywhere. But if you want to break a category code, call a drink Tractor. It's because you kind of like, and I'm pretty sure it looked. I'll have to post a photo of it. But I think the thing for me is, how do you be distinctive if you're also looking like everybody else? And that's the thing that I'm seeing in some all this pastelization of everything.
So obviously you're going to have trends, design trends go through, and that's all cyclical, So as I said, minimalism has come and gone. 90s has been in for what 90s style has been in for a little while, and it's kind of like it's mixing up with maximalist, sort of like big, bold, everything going all at once. So there's a lot of that sort of going on. Not necessarily so much here, I'd say, especially over in America and in the UK, a lot of that sort of going on. But then you have to tie that in with a lot of food trends, because I guess that's what's changed from, if you go back to, UK late 90s, there wasn't all of these food trends. Protein was there, but it wasn't a big thing. Fiber was always there, but it wasn't.
Oh my
big.
God!
Now
protein bloody everywhere. Everything's
so you can play in that protein area. But does I think you just got a question. Does protein always need to be black? Can it be a different?
Well, it depends if it's for the boys or the girls. The girls probably want pink.
I think you've just got to question every single every single trope which is in that category, and going, what's right, what's wrong, what areas can we actually bend or break to stand out in there, and also to come back to it, what is really true to us as a product. As a mission, what are we trying to do? What are we trying to say? I mean, you look at the Dairy Collective. I mean, they made a really conscious decision to be really different to the anchors and all of those big.
Which is a tough call to make when, it's an easy and a hard call when you're a challenger like that. And we've talked about challenger brands. You've got to find. You don't have the money, so you've got to find a way to cut through. And obviously, being different is the way that they've chosen.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we marketers live and die on briefs, and briefs are, they've got a bad rap, but I'm sure you see a lot of briefs coming across your desk as well. So let's say a marketer's listening to this and they're about to go into a packaging brief tomorrow. What advice would you give them to create a better brief? Maybe one thing that they could do differently, or how they should be thinking about it to have a better chance of success.
So I guess I see a lot of briefs come through, and they tend to go OTT on a lot of information. I think
is that AI, do you think, or is that it's always been that way?
But I have read through briefs in the last 6 months where you go, this smells, sounds, reads like AI. So there is that. I don't want to sort of disperse and say that's everything, but it's not, So the very good briefs are really pointy. So within the first page, I kind of get exactly what the issue is, what the problem is, what we're trying to solve. And also the good briefs, they understand that that the packaging. I think a lot of marketers and I think in the back of their head that they understand that that's the issue. Packaging does a certain job.
Yes.
Advertising does another part of a job.
Mm-hmm.
Media does another part of a job.
Yeah.
And within a packaging brief, I tend to pick up on a lot of words: premium, friendly, accessible, blah, 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 blah.
Mm.
And I always go back to, I always question going, the packaging.
That's not a problem for packaging to solve.
Two of these things extremely well. It can't do these other things. So these other things we've got to sort of like not park. We've got to sort of like have this, within that whole story. But the packaging is I guess the old cliche entry point for a consumer. So obviously, organically nowadays people will discover it on social media or in other assets. But the packaging can be premium by all means. The accessibility and the sort of like and the discoverability of it can come through social media, and the tone of voice can start to unravel there. The packaging can't be everything all at once, and that's where I think a lot of packaging sort of like dies, or not dies, probably comes a bit sort of like sinks back into the background of all the noise when there's brand managers or marketers or whoever's making a decision to go, message, we need this message, we need this message.
Oh my God, we need our founder story,
like,
and we need a
and the influencer needs to do the unboxing, and they need to use it in there every day.
But give me a brand that has a conviction to go, this is the brand, this is give me a visual or brand asset to go, this is us, and a reason to believe on the front face. And for me, that does a lot of heavy lifting. And then the great thing with packaging, it's three-dimensional. A lot of this doesn't necessarily need to. All you need to do is grab attention and get someone to pick up that brand.
Get it off the shelf.
Yeah. If they pick it up, then it's pretty much automatically in the trolley, or at least they're reading it.
I used to quite like a cereal box with a bit of information on the back once I bought it. Like when I was a kid, it's quite nice to have a little
that's what we've done with Hubbard's. I mean, Hubbard's, that was all about, that small dumpy box. We purposely made the box at that time back in 2010 small and dumpy, just to make it, there wasn't any strategic value.
It was different,
just to make it look cute and pick up and different from everybody else.
It was amazing, and it worked.
Well, exactly, it worked. Also, coincidentally, the small scale of it allowed Hubbard's to do another flavor. So instead of 6 SKUs, they got 7.
Because the facing is smaller.
Yeah.
Where I guess most cereal boxes are like, we want to take over the aisle, so let's make this box as wide as we can.
So, to come back to that point, it's, sometimes when it's possible, you've got to look at your category and go, from a packaging format, is the commonality of that pack format, is that right for us? Can we do something a little bit different? Because a pack silhouette or a pack shape goes a long way in differentiating. You just got to look at boring oat milk. It's not rocket science. They just went into a milk bottle shape.
I love it. It's so much nicer than better than buying the So Good. You know what I mean? Like it's just it's a gear. I'd much rather have a
no, absolutely. And obviously, every brand's got its needs and its warrants certain pack formats. Obviously, So Good as a brand that's at mass scale. So there's a reason for being. In that sort of sense. But for a brand like Boring, they could, sort of like swing for the fences and change that pack format. As I said, Hubbard's done it. You could probably just go through every category within the supermarket and look at one brand, and at least they've done the effort and they've tried to go into a different format. Mackenzie bread, when they went into that, the premium Mackenzie bread, brown paper wrap.
Yep.
It's kind of like that. Nothing major, but it changed the touchy feeliness of it. It made you feel like you're in a bakery rather than a supermarket. It's little tricks of a trade like that can go a long way. Now, obviously, not every brand can do that for whether it's investment, capital expenditure, or the fact that you're so big that, geez, we're exporting all over the place, so we've got to have a certain pack shape. So I appreciate, there's always that appreciation, but
it's complex. Like I think that ultimately, it's one of my favorite forms of packaging. Can do so much, but I think what you've highlighted there, Matt, it can be incredibly complex.
It is, and that's a great thing because, as I said, a studio, we do a lot of FMCG work. We do quite a lot of more premium, sort of like lower sort of volume products. And that's in those areas you can sort of really push the boat out in terms of packaging formats, finishes, and that sort of thing. With FMCG, you don't really have that accessibility or that purpose, within the brief. So it's got to be it's got to have obviously it's got to be a packed format. It's got to be robust. It's got to be able to take the product so easily in the warehouse or wherever it's being manufactured, shipped somewhere.
Yeah.
It'd be sitting on DC's shelf somewhere and then go from DC into supermarket and then survive there for a little while.
Not explode.
Live somewhere. So that pack is got to go through a lot of potential damaging areas. So that puts a lot of guardrails on. So I always smile when there's some really standout pack designs.
Yeah.
Because literally the design visual language on those pack formats that have to be a certain size, a certain shape, a certain rigidity, with minimal finishes on. That's got to do a lot of heavy lifting, It's as opposed to doing like a beautiful wine or a beautiful whiskey and that sort of. Not that I don't love doing beautiful wines, beautiful whiskeys, and that sort of thing.
You heard it here first.
That's a whole other area, but that's what I love about FMCG. It's about designing something that's that's
got to work.
Take all of that into consideration.
Yeah, and still has to fit in a shipping container and go wherever it needs to go.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing. Yeah, I mean we're doing a lot of stuff now for a lot of clients are coming to us now, and they're looking at export. They're not looking at.
That's brilliant. We love a Kiwi brand going overseas.
Yeah.
Well, Matt, it's been so good having you on the pod. Thank you for sharing your story on us. I feel like we've got a lot more to delve into, so we might need to get you back at some point.
No, that's all right. I appreciate this, and I always love talking about design. And I apologize. I do tend to ramble when I get passionate.
Great
we really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Matt. Thanks for having us on. Matt from OnFire Design.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Can the Marketing Podcast is brought to you by Human Digital and Q Marketing. Our editor is Bruna Barbosa. New episodes drop weekly, so tell your friends and colleagues.
If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you follow and subscribe to Canned wherever you listen. Apple, Podcasts, Spotify, and if you want the full visual experience, check us out on YouTube.
See you next week.